Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I try not to be very controversial anymore. Life is too short, so I try to avoid the whole controversy thing when I make videos. And I'm looking to dim this thing a little. There we go. Um, so what I'm going to talk about may tick a couple people off. I hope it doesn't. And I'm not coming from any kind of standpoint where I'm condemning anybody for doing anything. We just probably have different needs or play styles or ideas. But anyhow, I've have heard a lot of people say, in various media, whether it's videos or forums or actually face-to-face talking about, how they like to put a little bit of effort into character creation. That you shouldn't just describe your character to people as like, hey, this is Bob the fighter. He has an 18 strength, but more like a bit of a story about it. Make up a backstory. Actually kind of get into your character and come up with like a whole function and a role and what he's all about, etc. And I get that, and I think that's cool. I think, for me at least, I try not to get too involved with that in the beginning because I'm not sure if Bob's going to live or not. So just from my own experience, I had one character who I initially just described as, this is Doras because I like to name guys after Star Trek characters for some reason that year. And he's just the kind of guy that you would not leave alone with your sister. And that was about his personality. And he was a little, just not a nice guy. Over time, I found out what he was like. And I found out what he was like based on us playing. And, thinking, okay, in this situation, what would I do? And sometimes it was just things I did impulsively. And I say, I think he's kind of like that. And it was interactions with the other players, what the world was actually like, how the game went. And then over time, his personality fleshed out. And I knew exactly what he was like. But I started with a basic thumbnail sketch. And so I think, for me, that's about as much effort as I'd ever want to put into somebody in the beginning. And, I think probably that's all you really need to do. If you want to go hog wild, go ahead. But don't cry when the guy dies. So that brings me up to a second point, which is probably going to get more people upset. And so I hope not. But anyhow, this is kind of the mindset that I've encountered occasionally where people decide, well, it would not be okay for their character to die. And I understand we can definitely have a social contract, and we be really upfront. This game is kind of lethal, not lethal, whatever it is. And if it's you're not cool with that, you can leave. But just a mindset, they shouldn't be able to die. I encounter that occasionally. And so I'll back up a little bit, and I get that character generation can sometimes be very time consuming, and sometimes it's the fluff, which I'm not as sympathetic to for the reasons I described earlier in the video. But the other reason is because sometimes the crunch, like when I played in, like say, I'm not to pick on a game, but something like Pathfinder, it took a lot. It was involved, making a character. Whereas in a lot of the games I like, it takes 5-10 minutes. But I get that if you like that game, it can take a long time to develop somebody. As far as putting the numbers on a piece of paper, figure out what do you want to do with this guy. So I get it. It's like you do all that, and then the guy bites the dust. You're like, oh man, that sucked. I have to do this again. So I understand. I'm sympathetic to that. I'm a little. So I get that standpoint. As far as and I'll back up a little again. You just kind of come from the mindset that. I've talked to people and they'll say something like, hey, look, I'm choosing to spend my valuable free time doing this. And so, I don't want to roll for stats. I want to do a point buy. I don't want to play an average guy. I want to play a guy that does this. And, damn it, I want to play a wizard, so I'm going to play a wizard. And so I get that. I get that because, a lot of these people are my age. They don't have as much time. So they want to, get the most bang for their buck while they're here. So I'm, and that's, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. I'm a little less sympathetic to kind of the shared narrative approach where, like, I'm gonna have this big input in the story. I believe in player agency, big time, but I don't necessarily believe that you get to dictate what happens or etc. Sometimes it can be a little fun if say, hey, my guy be from this town? Can it be the son of some noble or whatever? Okay, if that's not gonna muck things up too much. What I tend not to be really sympathetic to at all is the notion that, like, okay, I've done this, I have this big investment now, it's not fair if my character dies. And generally, it's when they use the kind of rationale that, like, once again, I'm choosing to spend my valuable time here, so it's not okay if my guy dies. And so I back up for a second, and I say, okay, well, replace the word role-playing game. Take that out of the sentence, and take die, and replace die with lose or fail. And then you can say, now insert something like, I've chosen to play soccer in my valuable time. It's not okay if I lose. if my team loses. That starts to make no sense. Or it's not okay if I don't get to be the goalie, even if I suck at it. And to use another example, which is not, it's not a perfect analogy by any means, but like, I play the bass guitar. I played it for a long, long time. It would be like me saying, hey, it's not fair if it turns out I suck at this, or if I make a bunch of music and put a lot of effort into recording these songs and then nobody likes them. That's not fair. Or if I play at a gig and nobody shows up, or the gig kind of sucks. That's not fair. You see where I'm going with that analogy? I don't want those bad things to happen either. Sometimes they do. Sometimes I've played a gig or a song, I was like, that kind of sucked in hindsight. Sometimes things don't always go your way. Heck, sometimes things don't always go your way. I'm not going to protect somebody from dying necessarily. It's a bummer if it happens. I'm big into like, are you sure you want to do that? That your final answer? But I don't necessarily think it's unfair if your character dies. I didn't want the wizard I played that whole time to die, but he died spectacularly in one round. And that was because I decided, the party was in trouble. He was not an altruistic guy, but he knew he was going to die too. He went into harm's way to do one thing, to hit this earth elemental. He had 29 hit points, and the earth elemental rolled, I think it was something like 40 or 48, rolled 32. He died. Boom. In one round. Statistically, not a big chance of that happening, but it happened. And I definitely brought it upon myself, getting in harm's way. But it was a calculated risk, and I lost. Oh well, life isn't fair all the time. But then I started playing as henchman and fleshed out his personality a little more because he was a little flat, and then he wasn't. But the magic user was very flat at the end of all that, quite flat.